Do you want to know all the things we've been learning about the new leash ring from Souz Slacklines? Check it out on this episode of How Not to Highline. Hi, I'm Ryan Jinks and welcome to Brazil. I'm here with Mateus Vini and we are getting ready for the June festival for Souz Slackline Festival here at Veredas. Yeah, what he said. Veredas. And it's pretty cool. There's a double waterfall here, and we're setting up a slackline right now, our space net, over this smaller waterfall. And we have 100 meter and 270 meters over on the bigger one. But today we're going to talk about the leash ring that we brought here, and what we've experienced by using it, because some people have concerns that it could pop off the thimble part of the ring. Let's check it out. Let's go chase the stick. Go chase the stick. Milo really loves his sticks. What are you doing there?
We're fixing these bolts.
Am I filming you? Filming me? Filming you? Filming me? Ah. All natural bolting.
Keep it natural.
So they're building the slackline over there. Let's talk about the leash ring here. I'm pretty excited about this, but it does require a few different things than you're used to with leash rings. These bomber leash rings are more common, where you tie the leash to the ring. Pretty basic, right? And I'm not really fond of the bomber rings because we generally only use one. And even though they're forged and not welded, at least they should not be, they're pretty bomber, but I like to have redundancy as much as possible. And you rarely see two on here, which we're not even using for Highline. So we're using these new leash protectors, which is what they're called, because they're not technically leash rings. It only has the rope going around it, because you don't want rope on your Highline. Because if you slide across this without this protector, you could probably cut through your leash before you're webbing, because your leash is moving over a distance of webbing. So you cannot use a figure 8 right here, because you can't make this tight enough. That's not how this works. As tight as much as you try, you can't get this tight enough. So you have to build a noose, or like a glorified slip knot, in order for every time you pull on the main part of the leash when you take a whip, it makes this tighter. Now, we did put this on the slack snap machine, and I think it performed really well. It broke on my figure 8 on this side, because it preserves a lot of the strength from the rope, even though it's not a figure 8 that we're used to. Now, a fisherman's knot is 2 ropes joined together, or a stopper knot, depending what you're using it for. Like if I'm doing a rappel at the end of my leash, end of my rope, you don't want to rappel off the end of your line, so you build a stopper knot. If you put 2 ropes together and do it on opposite, it's a fisherman's knot. Basically, that's how a noose is built. Create a loop, and then go back up towards your loop. Put that tail through there. And this, you put over the ring. Now, when you pull the main line, it gets tighter. Like that. And the harder you pull, the tighter this gets. Now, you can tell the difference between this tail and this tail. I don't believe this tail is long enough. I believe that the tail used to be probably about that much more. I think it did get sucked up into here with all this cyclic loading that we've been doing. I don't think it's too much of a problem, as long as we make our tails a little bit longer when we start, because then we can do a stopper knot like this, which still allows the main part of the leash to pull without pulling this part. And this would prevent the tail from going in anymore. I think that is a nice solution. The problem with this leash is it's a little bit thicker. I think it's a 10mm rope with 1-inch tubular webbing over it. Where normally, I believe it's a 9mm rope with 11/16 webbing. Those are the ones from Balanced Community that at least I'm used to. So, something we did try earlier is to tape all the way down. And I found that it was actually really bad because after only 3 whips, my noose was open like this and I could pull it off my ring. Now you're not gonna die right away if that happens, but if it comes off and you slide, you could cut either your leash or your webbing. So you really, really don't want it to open up. You want it really tight up against the ring right here. So putting tape on here pulled both more and more each time. Some people have mentioned about finishing it with a figure 8. So you pre-tie half a figure 8 like you do before you tie into your harness, and then you can feed your tail through that. But that's the same problem. You don't want this to be pulled ever. You never want to grab the knot when you're climbing the leash, because that's how it's a slip knot. You don't want it to unslip. You want to only pull on this strand. So if you're really concerned about this tail, then you just put this stopper knot here. And if you want, you can put a piece of tape about right there, marking where the tail is, just so you can keep an eye. So if it gets like sucked up like that much, you can retie it or reevaluate it and just watch what's happening. This is a knot that does better the tighter it is. This thing is crazy tight. I'm pulling the tail and I cannot undo this. I cannot get this ring off, the leash off of this ring. So I'm pretty happy with the way this is, and I will go out and whip on it right now to show you that I trust it and I think it's fine. It's getting a little marked up right here. I think the powder coating or the paint is más or menos, but for, I think it was $10 I paid for these. This is a fantastic ring, and the inside diameter is super good enough for a normal rig like this, or even the Enob split. This slides over the Enob split just fine. We're also going to do some more slack snap tests when I get home to show you how this breaks and what it breaks at, and then I'll show you why you cannot tie it right here, because we're going to pull it like this and watch it break. All right, let's put this on the slack snap machine. Before I do that, let me say that it's 57 millimeters in diameter. Now that I looked it up, it's about 12 or 13 US dollars. And one of the medium steel normal leash rings that we use is also that, but we have to use 2 of them. This is incredibly light. This is painted and not powder coated, which I'm not actually that fond of, and you can see that the inside has, and he mentions this on the website, so it's not a problem. He has to, hang it somewhere when he's painting it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But, it's a great leash ring. It's a great price. I'm just trying to be a little picky here. But it's super interesting how it breaks and what it breaks at, so let's go slack snap. That is 2 kilonewtons right there. You can see just kind of how the rope moves around all that stuff. Yeah, it's pretty tight. Figure 8s do get deformed when you pull on them when this strand is loose and this strand is tight. That's pretty normal. But anyways, back to this. I definitely cannot get this thing off. There's just no way. If I have 2 kilonewtons on there, I imagine the rope would break before the ring does. Let's find out. That is 3 kilonewtons. 4 kilonewtons. 5 kilonewtons. 6.7 kilonewtons. 8.3 kilonewtons. Holy shit. 9.6 kilonewtons. Holy shit. 15.7 kilonewtons. I think our knot is pretty tight around this. Wow. Well, I feel pretty good about that now. Tighter it gets. And the tail really hasn't decreased at all. It was just stretching in here. So the more you pull on it, even though you'll never get 15 kilonewtons on a whip, ever. Wow, I think it really preserved the strength of the line, because the line actually broke in the figure 8, which is how you'd tie in to your harness. So it would break at your harness, technically, at least with this rope. So I clearly cannot untie this knot, nor am I going to try. So I took a knife and I cut it, but I only cut it in one spot, and you can see this 2-inch gap here where the rope recoiled back because there was so much tension in this, and this is a static rope. I just found that to be super interesting, how much space there is after I've cut that. But now I'm going to take this 9mm static rope because it's a little bit more agile. That 11mm is just a bit too stiff. So anyways, we're going to do the barrel knot. So we come barrel knot, slip knot, whatever. I'm going to tape on this sample. I'm always doing 3 wraps in all my tests. I suppose you could do 2, but I mean, it is a really interesting knot to be using as a leash knot. So put it on there, pull it tight, and pull that tight and that tight. But this sample, I'm going to tape the tail, and we're going to see what happens when this gets pulled and pulls this as it goes when you do that. So let's find out what these other alternatives do when we slow pull our leash ring. Okay, so what we have here is I've taped the entire tail with electric tape, and you can see the gap is pretty normal. Whoa. So that right there is 1.7 kilonewtons, and you can see that spacing now. So if we relaxed the rope after you whip, for example, this ring would come off. And that's what happens with this taped. So let's keep pulling. Whoa, that's so cool. We're at 3.4 kilonewtons. 4.1 kilonewtons. Ooh, that's interesting. It's sliding back in now that the tape has been compromised. Ah, interesting. 5 kilonewtons. Now, you're never going to get 5 kilonewtons on a leash, so basically the only positive thing is that the glue failed on our rope. Wow, so cool. 7, 8 kilonewtons, 10 kilonewtons. Whoa. In case you're wondering, this is what keeps those pulleys from flying. Anyways, it broke in my figure 8 on this side. You can see right there that it broke. Now this isn't about how strong the leash is, it's how it's breaking. It's breaking in the figure 8. and not breaking here. This is not warm. This knot is warm. Knot is warm at 11.9 kilonewtons. Are ropes supposed to look like this? A lot of ropes do get excited after they've been on the slack snap machine. This is definitely not a good idea. We could see how it pulled open, and then once the tape slipped, it sucked back in. So our next test, so some have talked about using a figure 8 to keep it from slipping off. So this is right there. You have to have a super long tail in order to do this. Tie your barrel knot like normal. Do my 3 wraps. Stick the tail down there. And you're going to use that tail to follow through that figure 8, just like when you use a figure 8 on your harness. This, suck that up, pull it tight, and then in order for it to not slip off in case the tail got sucked in, which I mean, I was concerned about that too. I'm going to now take this tail and follow it through. Now I think we all know what's going to happen is it's literally going to pull this knot open and the leash ring is just going to be able to come off super easy. So that is a mildly dressed figure 8. But whatever, that looks super safe, but let's go find out how safe it isn't. Okay, so the rope is starting to get tight. We're not even at 1 kilonewton yet. That is officially 1 kilonewton, and it's already starting to open, but so far it's not a problem. You can see how as this tightens and is no longer allowing stretch right here, they're pulling both strands at the same time. So we allowed slack in the system, and you can see that it can come off, especially with a lot of movement. You can put it back on there. And it's not too big of a problem. I suppose if this was loose, but I wouldn't want to get my hand stuck in that. I'm not fond of this at all. So it definitely is not something I'd want to do, but let's take it over the top. Okay, that is 4 kilonewtons. That's 6.8. 9, 10. Wow. And it broke on our figure 8. So, all right, so that comes off pretty easily. Clearly, ooh, that smells. You smell that? Yeah, I definitely don't like this as a loop, as a concept. This knot is pretty tight, a little bit warm. This knot is super warm, and it clearly comes off the ring. So now for my preferred method on how to tie this leash protector. Slip on your barrel nut like we have been doing all along. Get it tight, pull the tail, pull the main line, get it the way you want. Now, you take this tail, and if you finish it like you do after you tie your figure 8 on your harness, is you tie that little stopper tail stop off, lock off. I'm going to suck it up right into the bottom of that knot. It's not going to suck up the tail enough it's going to get stuck inside of there. And this tail's a little bit longer than I would want when I'm highlining. I'd probably make it about to that long. And I just leave it loose. You never want to pull it. When you're climbing your leash, you never want to climb on that. But once this gets set, it shouldn't be a problem. So now, we're not going to tape it or anything. We're just going to go test it like we see it and see if this opens up at all and how it performs. So we're at 1 kilonewton. .3 kilonewtons. I'm noticing that it does allow this to pull And this is kind of getting sucked up into this, but our gap is still very healthy. I'm okay with that. The tail does get sucked up a little, but very, very little. 5.4 kilonewtons, more than you'd ever have on your leash anyways. 7.3 kilonewtons. And now this barrel knot is completely sucked up into this leash. 9.5 kilonewtons. Wow, that's a very, 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 very tight barrel knot. I can untie this. It has a little flexibility in it. I would definitely not be able to untie this. But this tail barely got sucked up, so I would definitely do it about that much shorter. And then obviously you don't want the end of your rope to look like that. But I'm pretty happy with this. Looks like I'm gonna have to cut this off. Shall we find out what the ring breaks at? 15 kilonewtons and it starts to deform. Whoa. 18.9 and so 19.7 kilonewtons is much stronger than I thought this would be. It's actually quite deformed. And you're not supposed to tie ropes directly to this. But makes me feel better if somebody made that mistake. They most likely wouldn't die. They would just mess up their ring. So I'm pretty happy with our barrel knot with that stopper finish. And tell me what you guys think in the comments below. But now we're gonna go back to Brazil to test the leash in person.
Woo! Crazy ass dude.
Some things in this sport are counterintuitive, like tying your leash with a slip knot. Therefore, you shouldn't highline. Woo!